Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another session today in Kent North. Today we're going to be discussing and having dialogue over how to win in multiple offer situations. It became very apparent that our inventory levels are historically low, and pretty much everyone is competing right now. If houses are priced right, they are typically seeing multiple offers. The highest one I've heard so far is 35 offers, Redmond, and it sold 200,000 over their original price.
I was talking to somebody yesterday, Rambler in Edmond,
Mhm.
200 showings within 2-3 days. Wow.
200, yeah.
And the person offered 50,000 and they didn't even get a call back from the listing agent. Usually they call you and say, what can you do? Can you do?
Yeah.
Not a big,
Yeah, stuff like that. It's just, I mean, you're pretty much guaranteed you're gonna be competing. So it's really important for us to kind of break down and have a full understanding of how we can be more competitive in our offers. And I've just put together like a kind of a presentation for you guys to utilize so you can take notes, and we're gonna have more discussion about just things we're seeing. But you name it, from whatever, county right now, that's all really low. King County was hovering right around the 2020 mark for like
Wow.
where we're at for level of listings, active listings. So, but as soon as the interest rates like finally dipped below 7, that brought a lot more activity. And I think a lot of people are finally like over the shell shock of where rates really are. And they're kind of like, starting to understand that there's programs and things that can be done about the rates. And realistically, the rates are just temporary anyway. And we're always saying like, date the rate, marry the house.
Mhm.
Like you're not going to get the opportunity again to get the house. Like the rates are always going to fluctuate no matter what. So let me kick us off. Got my water.
are we gonna have a handout or not?
Nope, no handout. No handout, no handout. All right, Zoom people, can you see screen okay? Hopefully. Somebody want to unmute and say yes?
Yeah, can see it fine.
Yes, looks good.
Thank you. And this is a class for participation, all right? So even if you're in the Zoom world, you're gonna have to have dialogue. All right, but we're gonna start out right away with the quiz, pop quiz. For those of you that been in this class before,
Uh-oh.
don't give answers away. You guys brought number 2 pencils, right? What key element is the seller looking for?
Certainly. But it's not close.
Huh? Yeah,
As little was. Offer.
highest offer. Yeah, that's what we typically hear. But you got it. Certainty.
I mean,
Yeah, it's certainty. This is what a seller wants to know. They want to make sure you can guarantee you are, the buyer's going to close. They've got the funds. They want a guarantee, right?
Strong solid buy.
It's not fun to, especially for a seller, if they're living in their house and they've got to move out, right before the day of closing, and know, that everything's going to happen on time and be perfectly timely, and it's, everything's going to work out perfectly, right? It's a scary thing, and emotions are always running high. But certainty is a firm conviction that something is the case. You're going to know that that is going to happen. So this is what you need to convey in all of your offers. So we talk about this all the time, about the yearly housing cycle. And every single year, this is what the Pacific Northwest looks like for our average activity. This is just what happens every single year. Why is it shaped like this? Do you think it's shaped like this in Arizona?
Because of the weather? Schools.
Weather, schools, holidays, all these types of things always come into play. And this is typically what you see, but in different areas, it's not quite as a peak like our areas, but it is, you know, a little bit maybe a lower mountain in other areas. It's just because of what goes on in life. But the thing to remember is the best time to buy a home is when the timing is right for the client. How do you know you're going to be in a multiple offer situation from the beginning? How will you know?
Well, you communicate with the agent, ask questions,
Oh,
you know, how many showings, do you have anything yet? You know,
yeah.
what are you looking for?
Does anybody like look at showing time? Keep an eye on showing time? Keep going in there and looking and like, oh, how many showings are registered in here? You could keep logging in and going back and taking a look. All you gotta do is pretend like you're gonna schedule a showing and then
Do those show up as overlapping shoulders are allowed?
it does, I think it makes the line. Yeah, it makes a weird,
Cause it wouldn't block it out. but I
Right.
don't schedule showings very often, so I don't see that end of it, but I,
I know, but when you see the whole day taken, yeah, it's obvious that. you know, it's-
okay, I just didn't know if they showed up if.
yeah.
I know they block them out if you don't allow overlap.
How else? Zoom people, you're being a little too quiet. I'm gonna start calling on you.
Sought after neighborhood. You know that.
No, and it's sought after neighborhood.
History of the pendings, if they're like 2 days on the market.
Oh, looking at data, yeah, around the neighborhood.
What's inventory
There's one more blaring one that's pretty dang obvious.
price.
Will they have, if they have an offer review date, generally,
What do you know? Offer review date already written into the agent only remarks. That means the listing broker and seller is anticipating multiple offers. I mean, right now, if it's priced right and you know it's priced right for an area, the level already right now is because we're hovering in that frenzy market status. You're probably going to see it. So it's gonna be common right now. Obviously, let me go back to this picture, but you see as we break into the March, you know, timeframe for the beginning of the spring market, that's when the most listings start coming on, right? Typically. But as we know that a lot of people have locked in their houses, or they're kind of locked in because everyone wants these 3% interest rates. Remember all the information that Aaron showed at the sales meeting on Tuesday? How many was it? 60% basically were saying if it was below 4 or 3, right? If it was either one of those, you're talking about 60% of homeowners would say, we would sell that and go buy again. So there's still a lot of pent up demand just because of rates. All right. So the relationship we create with other brokers and vendors is everything. They are our VIP clients. Returning calls, emails, doing what you say you're going to do is critical in our business. The brokers to whom you present your offers to will either choose to work with you because you make their lives easier, or they won't work with you in today's multiple offer environment. Treat them the way you want to be treated in any and all situations. What goes around comes around in life, right? The golden rule. And then properly educate your buyers for today's seller's market. Buyers must know many homes sold today are in multiple offer scenario and were sold above list price, as they may never get a chance to counteroffer. Present current market statistics to reflect how quickly our market has changed, and properly educate your buyers to the current market. The goal is to manage their expectations, prepare them to come in as strong as possible. It's all about that consultation, right? What tools can you utilize that you've got available to you to help a client understand the market? What do you use?
CMA tools, not just among us.
Yeah, for buyers, you can do a CMA, absolutely. That's something you should be doing. What about the housing updates? You have your clients signed up for that so they can actually visually see what's going on in that marketplace in which they're wanting to buy. Obviously, if you've got Property Tracker, you can literally show them you know, the market insights to an exact community if you wanted to, or even an exact neighborhood or an exact condo building. So utilizing these types of technology is gonna help with that. What about buy side? You can use buy side, show them what the heat map looks like for the activity in the last 90 days for that property, where, you know, where the property lies in the map. And also you can show them how many matched buyers in the back end of just John L. Scott platform are a match to the property, and that might show them what kind of competition the house is getting. Anybody use Trend Graphics? You use that, you guys use that for everything, for sellers, for buyers too, though?
I don't know what Jeff is.
Ah,
It's a good tool.
it's a really good tool. I mean, it's very, especially if you got a client who's an analytical engineer, like, give them this kind of stuff and they'll eat it up. Cause it's a lot of times, you know, we discuss the market and the clients kind of like, they just listen to like maybe what's going on in the news and they may not believe you. We've had plenty of buyers who maybe come to this area and they're like, oh, this house is listed for 600,000, you know, 5,990. Oh, I see it's been on the market for 2 days. And you go to the showing and there's like 50 business cards already there, right? And they're like, yeah, I think we want to make an offer on that house. Let's go ahead and offer 450,
Him and I go a little under.
right? We can always go up from there. Does that happen often?
Not often, but.
Why are you sighing? Let's see if this is an AI chat or is it someone with a real question? Oh, it's an AI. What do you think, Zoom people? And then, of course, your property tracker home search, the app you can utilize as well. Basically, there's a lot of different types of technology you can utilize to help prove what's going on in the market. If you don't provide anything, then it's only the stuff that's going on with your dialogue with the clients. And you don't know how, if they're gonna believe you or not. So the more evidence you can provide to them, the easier it'll be for them to understand what's really truly going on in the market. All right, so buyer ready day one checklist. Buyer consultation. We know this is the most important thing, and now it really has to be done because of the law changes, right? You only get one meeting, and as soon as the next time you're gonna be giving buyer brokerage, you know, services, you've got to have the agreement signed. So now it's even more critical to have your consultation down, you know, pat. You got to have it completely ready, knowing exactly how you're going to present and have dialogue with any of our consumers these days, because not only do you have to try to get to know them and what their wants and needs are, but you're also going to have to convey the new law, you know, and how things work now. So it's very critical. Market conditions by price range, location, home buyer strategy guide. John L. Scott made it really super easy and just gives you the complete presentation for you to present to clients. The brand new buyer kit is coming. They're just finalizing changes right now. So they only showed like 5 or 4 pages at the top 1% event. They showed it off just to kind of get people kind of hyped up a little bit, but it's got more relevant stuff to what, you know, what's going on now. And of course, with the new agency law. So they incorporated that into the consultation. So we should be getting those by March. So just a couple weeks away. JLS housing update, obviously get them on there. Market insights, instant response market. That's literally what we're in. All right, time for another quiz. What is the one key element to all multiple offers? We already talked about what the seller needs, right? Let's hear from Zoom people. You've been a little too quiet. So somebody from Zoom is gonna have to unmute. What's the one key element to all multiple offers, you think?
Make sure
you
they're,
wanna,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
you wanna submit your highest and best.
Highest and best offer? Maybe.
Make sure the financing is all in place and they're already pre-approved through the underwriter. They're ready to go.
Yeah. I
Find out
mean,
what's
that's-
most important.
Yeah, what's the most important key element? Find out what's most important to the seller?
Yeah.
Can be.
You have to communicate with the listing agent so they know who you are before you send them that offer.
If you're blindly sending offers and you didn't even talk to the listing broker, you already lost. That's completely backwards.
Especially if it's not a strong offer.
Yeah, how many times have you been with a client? And you started in and you've talked about about what you're gonna do for the seller and you're gonna list the property for them. When you find out what's the most important thing to them, a lot of times it's not just the price. There's a lot of other things. In our accountability group yesterday, one of the brokers was talking about that they got an offer on their listing and there was a couple other people that were showing and one that came back the same day for their second showing and another one that was asking questions about the property. The broker knew that they were close to getting multiple offers. When they called the seller back and they reviewed the offer, they just sounded off. And our broker was like, okay, time out here. Something's right. Something's not right. So he's like, is everything okay? Are you guys okay? It sounds to me like maybe, there's some hesitation and, even talking about the offer. Are you guys all right? And they go, we just want this to be done. We're so stressed about this. It's so much stress. And he's like, our broker's like, not a problem. Cause sometimes we get so focused in and we're gonna do great. We're gonna get multiple offers. We can easily get more money. It wasn't about the money at all for the client. So it's really key about the communication, not just from listing brokers, but to buyer brokers too, especially when there's multiple offers. You could become that lifesaver to the listing broker sometimes. Sometimes oh, man, hey, congratulations on your new listing. I saw that you probably had 50 showings on this, in 2 days. You must be, tired of answering phone calls and stuff like that. When you can have those conversations with the broker, they'll open up yeah, I'm so tired of this. This is such a pain.
Getting
And
report, yeah.
yeah, sometimes you can have dialogue with them and they will immediately connect with you because you recognize what's going on with them.
What I
Everybody.
always ask is, what do you need? What do you want for your clients
Mhm.
looking for? So I can coach my
Yeah.
clients, to provide that.
Yeah, that's definitely a question you should ask. You guys know what these are, right? These supercomputers. There's more technology in these than there is to getting a rocket onto the moon, right? There's more in this now than there was then. But the main thing that this thing is the phone. A lot of times we get hooked on the technology replacing the communication for us. Does anyone have a text message and it says
I can talk.
that's
to them.
fine, right? What is that what do you mean? Right? And the people are just saying, oh no, that's fine. You can't verbalize what the communication really is from a text or a email. And then so many times people just immediately get defensive or they or they're gonna
WhatsApp,
just,
everything.
huh?
You can make or break a conversation.
Oh, yeah,
With
absolutely.
words.
But you got to be able to call the listing broker, inquire about any special seller needs. If anybody's taken the certified negotiation expert, course or the MCNE, like a lot of the first things that they talk about is the negotiations on the other side of what's most important to them. If you go ahead and ask that question, right, and the listing broker tells you, oh man, my sellers are just really stressed, right? They want, they just want this to be done. Like if I'm guessing if the brokers, would have had that understanding with their clients, and if they communicated that and they made that clear to the other parties, you never know. One person could be like, oh, we can close in 5 days, but we don't want to stress the other party out and like try to force them to be out. And, you never know like where that conversation's going to go. So if they would have known that, they could have written it that way, is my point.
Right.
So like, if you just are not communicating, you're never going to know that.
I give another hint,
Yes.
read the offer instructions. If you're not already.
Yeah, absolutely.
Documents attached.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we try to put that stuff in all our listings, or we do put it in all our listings, but like if, often a seller needs to have extra stay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, if you know there's special needs already from the seller, there a lot of listing brokers are really good about that, and they'll put an offer instructions, form. Yeah, definitely, please read those before you even call, because that definitely will bug the listing
Yeah,
broker,
read it
like,
and then-
really? Like, this is what we put in there and you didn't even read that? Ask about
Hey.
listing broker needs.
Hey, Eric,
Yes,
hey,
David.
how are you doing?
Good, brother, how are you?
Very good, very good. Hey, I know this is obvious, but gotta be really firm about having your lender call the, listing broker ASAP. They're not always gonna trust what we say. And I mean,
Yeah.
I know we all do this, but sometimes you get busy and it's, oh, I'll have them call tomorrow. And by then the offer's accepted.
Oh,
So
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
no, there is no obvious like thing in this class. That's the kind of funny thing. A lot of times people think like, oh yeah, that's obvious. But how many times, listing brokers, how many times have you not ever heard from the lender before you guys were deciding on, it happens all the time.
Sometimes we're chasing them down, like we.
Of course.
Answer the phone. So
Yeah.
talk to you about your.
Yeah, if they're calling from the beginning, how does that make you feel?
I think Aaron mentioned that he's being CC'd on every offer, and I thought
Yeah.
that was like gold.
Oh, yeah.
I always write in the offer, my preferred lender, name and number.
Yeah.
But having it part of the communication, I thought that was,
Oh, it's-
like a step.
It absolutely is. And I mean, if you're trying to do every single little thing you can to make a difference to win that offer, right? It's critical. You've got to, do everything you can
And you
in
want
your
to
power.
make it easier for the agent, to
Mhm.
be able to communicate with the lender.
Yeah. Definitely, listing brokers on the flip side, you definitely better talk to every single lender, if the buyer's having financing. That's the only way you're gonna like really get the critical understanding of, do they truly have the funds? It says, oh, they're FHA. Do they have 3.5% down? You start having dialogue and they're like, yeah, the down payment assistance program just got more money. The buyer's, ready. And then you're like, uh-oh, well, now I know that, they wrote the deal wrong. They didn't even write down payment assistance. They just marked FHA. So the lender's telling you they don't have the 3.5% down. So stuff like that, you gotta put your detective hat on and really have conversations to figure that stuff out.
well, also, Eric, I
Okay.
mean,
Yeah, David.
you send a letter and it's just saying, approved for this and this amount and this date. But when the lender calls, you're getting so much more detail.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally, especially when they can tell you, oh, we can close sooner. We just want to make sure we are giving you enough time, maybe because the seller's got a lot of stuff in the house and it doesn't look like they'll be ready to move in 10 days. So those types of dialogue, stuff that you can say that is not in the offer itself could actually make the difference. But sellers and listing agents are not only looking for highest priced offers, but also the one that minimizes their risk and gets them to a smooth closing. It is not always the highest offer that gets accepted, and then be nice. Be nice. That's one of these things, you know, you're calling this broker. So how many offers do you have? I've actually heard this, you know. If you, you know, really make their job easier, even if you don't win, then you never know, like, if they're gonna list another home for another, you know, another client later that maybe you're gonna run into again. Or vice versa, maybe you can win and be the backup.
Right.
I mean, that's happening right now. We've had 2 of those in here right now that people, they signed the right away, got into backup and now they're in first position.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Kill them with kindness. Just definitely, you know, being nice is really gonna go a long way. Reach out to the listing agent, send a video text, what's important to the seller, offer unique benefits to the seller, quick close or free rent backs, other terms, financial benefits, and or the latter strategy. Ask your buyer, are you willing to lose this house for losses to clients are 2x. So whatever they're like, you know, gonna lose on, it's always twice as bad to them. And it's the same for sellers. Like if you told a seller, hey, we need to do a $50,000 price reduction, to them, they're like, "Ugh, I just lost $100,000. So the psychology loss is always 2 times greater. Okay, so let's have some dialogue about making the deal stronger in your offer directly in Form 21. First thing is the offer expiration date, right? Oop. If an offer expiration date is left blank, how many days does that offer expire? Does it go on forever?
No.
2? Huh? You forget. A lot of brokers are like, oh, this offer's good forever, just whenever you want to sign it. What is 2? It's 2 business days. It says it right in the offer. If not,
But it's a nice way to present the offer when you know it's multiple offers and they're gonna go.
maybe, or has anyone used the strategy to make such a strong offer and you go in before the review date and win? Now, it could show all your cards. You could be showing like, what is the buyer willing to do?
That can be used as a tool for them.
It could, maybe.
I find that I don't like when I get that pressure.
Has anyone ever won before the offer review date?
Yeah.
You did too, didn't you?
Yeah.
It
What-
depends.
How will you know that that strategy might work?
If it's very compelling, like, okay, this is like the best I could do and I think we should see it, I would.
And call the agent.
Yeah.
Connecting with the agent, make a call, talk with them, hash them out. Hey, this is a perfect offer, I know they want to do it, we can do it sooner, how well do you know the customers can, we're willing to sell closer. My situation, the sellers needed to sell because they're building another house, so I use that as a heat point.
Yeah.
You gotta learn how to hustle and negotiate.
It's having the dialogue and understanding their wants and needs could dictate when you're gonna have this, you know, offer expire, and you absolutely, there's no rules. That's why it says in the offer review date, you know, for multiple offers, but it says seller may accept sooner.
Or-
Yeah, there's no law rules that they can't take an offer before that. Some buyer brokers will get mad.
Oh.
They're gonna get upset. They're like, hey, we were waiting for the offer review date. Why didn't you guys call us back and give us a chance?
I can.
Did you think that maybe that buyer broker did a good enough job at communicating to find out if they may accept anything sooner?
Yep.
My hunch is they probably didn't. They might have called and said, hey, what does your seller want? Most money? Okay, we could do that. Yeah. If you can give exactly what the sellers were wanting and you can convey certainty in that offer that it's gonna happen, you can absolutely win before all the other offers come in. But it's
Just like
all
in
gonna
that-
come down to the communication.
That situation when they were like, so like, we wanna be done, then that would be a perfect scenario.
Yeah. But guess what? None of the other brokers called and talked to our broker about it. So it's, it's one of those things. Do you have your fingers on the pulse of what's going on? Obviously, purchase price, right? Purchase price is the money. I mean, that's the price, right? That's the easiest one. Next is earnest money. Obviously, this is from the old form. Now you don't even have to mark any of that. It's just whatever amount's coming in. Earnest money was still, it's about that 1 to 3% rule or more. Some of the multiple offers coming in are having that 5%, like
Or more.
earnest money or more. It's just starting to happen again. We've been hearing a lot of cash offers coming back. I think sellers are either like doing HELOCs, they're getting all their money and they're like, we're gonna win, we're gonna go all cash, no financing, and then we'll sell the house later after we move into the other house. So there's a lot of cash offers. One of our brokers had 6 offers, 5 of them were all cash.
Wow.
Out of the 6 right now, it's
Out
like,
of cash around.
yeah. So that's starting to happen again. But please do not forget about earnest money. If the buyer delivers earnest money directly to closing agent, right? That's fine. Then the listing and selling licensing files must include the receipt showing the delivery by the buyer, right? This is the law. This is the Department of Licensing law. If the buyer delivers earnest money to the buyer's broker, then both the listing and selling firm's files must include a receipt showing timely delivery to the buyer's broker and a separate receipt showing timely delivery to the buyer's broker to the closing agent or holder of funds. So if buyer fails to timely deliver earnest money, the listing and selling firm's files must contain proof that the listing and selling broker put the seller on notice that the buyer failed to timely deliver earnest money. We've already had 3 of these this year. Yeah, we've already had 3 of these this year. Last year we had a DOL audit from one of our sister offices. And 2 of the deals that the Department of Licensing pulled for the audit actually had the deposit was late. And there was no notification in the file. So we got 2 warnings. So the Department of Licensing is going to look at this. So it doesn't matter if you're the buyer broker or the listing broker, like both firm folders must contain these items. And if the client gives you their earnest money, even if you touch it to make a copy of it to include it in your offer, like to show like, hey, we're ready. This is kind of an old school type of a play. But people, we still see this. If you took a client's check and they wrote it out to that escrow company, you have to put it on this form and you have to give a copy to the other side. So Form 89 has to be in the files. Listing broker's firm, selling broker's firm. So it's got to be in both. Non-refundable earnest money. You guys think we're seeing these already?
How do you feel about it?
We're seeing them. They're absolutely happening. We've got some that are like this. We've seen the Windermere one. Redfin's got one, like an addendum. Couple other firms have still to this day used this exact same attorney drafted language. Dollar amount of the earnest money deposit shall be released to the seller within 2 business days of mutual acceptance. Immediately upon delivery of the earnest money, the released funds shall be the property of the seller and then shall become a non-refundable deposit, but will still be applicable towards the sale. If this transaction fails to close for any reason other than default or breach of this agreement by the seller, said non-refundable deposit shall remain the property of the seller. Nothing in this paragraph precludes buyer from legal remedies from seller's default or breach. We have this in our office clauses still. If you use Transaction Desk, you can actually click in your form, go to our office clauses, and it'll input this language for you. So you don't even have to try to remember it. But you have to have plenty of dialogue with the client to make them understand that once that money is in the seller's bank account, how do you get that back? Even if the buyer has, you know, this, or the seller's like changes their mind. We have one from last year, the seller refused to extend the deal by 1 day. They said, no, we're not extending. And they kept the money. The client is still trying to work with attorneys to get it back.
Well, technically, the buyer was out of contract,
Yeah,
so we
course.
went back to the seller, you
yep,
know, is he willing or not?
yep.
But it's, yeah,
Another one we saw last year. You guys know this one. We talk about this all the time about the or sooner, right? The seller said, oh, okay, or sooner. The seller ended up finding out some reasons on why it wasn't a good idea to sell. So she changed her mind, went to an attorney, and the attorney said, well, it says or sooner. Go to escrow, go tell them you're ready to sign and you're ready to close tomorrow. This is like 4 days into the deal or 5 days into the deal. So that's what the seller did. Escrow called us and said, we got a call from the seller and they're demanding to be signed today and they're ready to close tomorrow.
so is that a thing? Can they do that and be enforced?
What do you think?
I guess, yes.
When does or sooner mean to you?
Oh my God, it's legal.
Absolutely, yeah, it's legal.
Wow.
Or there is a little better way we do have, rather than just using this language. John L. Scott does have the JLS NRF, which is the non-refundable fee addendum. This is an addendum in which you can make additional deposit besides earnest money. So the front page of your contract is not just the earnest money. That's not this amount, right? That earnest money that's on the front of your contract is different. So if you said, hey, my buyer's willing to give $10,000 for a non-refundable fee, but $20,000 is going to be regular earnest, or excuse me, but $10,000 will be earnest money. It's a $20,000 deposit, but the front page still has 10. Does that make sense?
Just give an extra.
So you really are gonna have to do, if you're the buyer broker and you're utilizing this, you're gonna have to have dialogue with the listing broker and maybe even escrow, because sometimes they're even confused, like, wait a minute, why are you guys sending us 20 grand? You said it's 10. Well, this is separate money, so that the earnest money is still protected under all the other contingencies, if you have any, right? So it is another way to do it that is a little bit better. It's basically the buyer will pay a non-refundable fee, and it's referenced to the fee to seller in the amount of within 2 days, if not filled in, of mutual acceptance. Anytime these timelines say 2 days, when it has to do with the earnest money, I would make sure you're writing 3 days. Because unfortunately, wires, you know, they've got cutoff times. If you end up, you know, all of a sudden, we're seeing a lot of these wires go late, come in late, and the next thing you know, now your buyer's deposit's late because you had it as 2 days rather than 3.
Well, they have a cutoff time that, you know, it's 2 o'clock or 12 o'clock.
Well, there's cutoff times from the banks when
From
they
the bank,
leave,
yeah.
and there's cutoff times for receiving, and it's just a pain. Having 3 days is the best buffer. 2 days is very short. And the 1 day, that is usually, unless you've got the check ready to go, you're probably gonna be late. So just be careful with that. It does have 2 boxes. I would absolutely check these though, is that buyer understands and agrees that the fee is not earnest money and is non-refundable under any circumstances other than a default by seller. Seller default or the following, select all that apply. Seller's exercise of a right of termination in the agreement for a reason other than buyer's default, or seller's inability to provide insurable title pursuant to general term E of the agreement. So I would check both of these if you use this, and this is a way to help protect some money, and then you are setting it in the transaction, just completely separate. But you can utilize this in a better way. Annie Fitzsimmons loved this addendum. She absolutely raves about this, like, oh my gosh, this is probably the best addendum I've seen a firm put together. Andy, our old attorney, put this one together, but it's still being utilized. All right. We're moving. Closing dates. What you write in for a closing date is going to be critical to the transaction. And obviously for negotiations, it's going to be everything, right? So writing in the date or sooner. We see this, we've already had the dialogue about the or sooner. It's just, I'm not a fan of it. If you have the dialogue and your lender's having the dialogue with the listing broker for them to understand, we probably will close sooner. We want to make sure what is the what's the most comfortable closing date. So just, I would much rather see that. Or other, if the possession is not on closing, attorneys always will tell you that the risk level in a transaction always gets elevated as soon as something else is marked other than on closing. It's just risky. If you guys are not getting, if the buyer's not going to have possession on closing, you must execute the seller occupancy, either 65B or 65A if the buyer's getting possession before. But this has to be done in the transaction. You got to have the form. In fact, our contracts say it in the boilerplate language. If possession's not on closing, these forms will have to be executed in the offer. So you might as well write it with the offer when you're submitting it. All right, timeout. We've talked a lot about some different strategies on whether or not you're going to be giving possession late or getting it early. But before we talk about other stuff, we've got to talk about the Jerry Maguire clause. You guys know what the Jerry Maguire clause is, right?
Show me the money.
Show me the money. Where's the money? Right? Boilerplate language of all of our agreements, the very first one, it's always in every one of our deals, right? And the boilerplate language is this: purchase price. Buyer shall pay to seller the purchase price, including the earnest money, in cash at closing. It's in cash, right? So the deal by default is all cash already. How many offers you see like people write in on the purchase price and they write all cash? Have you seen that? Do they have to do that? It's already all cash. It says it is at closing unless otherwise specified in this agreement. Buyer represents that buyer has sufficient funds to close this sale in accordance with this agreement and is not relying on any contingent source of funds, including funds from loans, the sale of other property, gifts, retirement, or future earnings, except to the extent otherwise specified in this agreement. The parties shall use caution when wiring funds to avoid potential wire fraud. Before wiring funds, the party wiring funds shall take steps to confirm any wire instructions via an independently verified phone number and other appropriate measures. So right here, oops, go back. So right here, our contracts are already defaulted to all cash. If it is anything other than all cash, and when I say all cash, it is checkings or savings, US checkings or savings, immediately withdrawable. That is what cash is. If it's anything other than that, then there must be other addendums and there must be other items in the contract to be able to explain what it is, where it is. You have to get into a habit of having dialogue with your clients, for buyers. When they say, oh, I'm all cash. And you're like, oh, great. Is it in your checkings or in your savings? This is the Jerry Maguire clause. This is what I call it. You have to say that because I go, Oh, it's in my stocks, or half of it's in my stocks. Oh, it's in bonds. Oh, it's in cryptocurrency. You're gonna hear different things, I guarantee it. Or how about this is this is my favorite one.
Stash of them.
Oh, it's all cash. It's all cash. Oh, really? Great. Is it in your check-ins or in savings? Oh, actually, I'm getting a hard money loan. You're gonna hear this.
So even if you have a stock portfolio and it's easily transferred, that's still not
No,
considered cash.
that's not.
So how do you write down for them? Because really like you would pay cash.
Well, obviously, we do forms class every week. We have dialogue on, exactly how to utilize every single form in the whole Northwest MLS, but you would use a 22EF. Evidence of funds
Of course.
for a hard money loan, for gift funds, for the sale of a property, or crypto, or ruby diamonds, or cattle, livestock. What's the other crazy ones?
Boats.
Goat,
Boat.
a boat,
Goats too, right?
goats too, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever you want. You can put anything on there. It says other.
Oh my God.
I think the craziest thing I've ever seen in my career is when someone came in and they actually had loose diamonds they wanted to use for earnest money. We were like, what? And they came in and they brought in a satchel and then laid them out, and we're like, how do we do this? And they had to go get it appraised and that, because they were gonna sell it. But that's, these things can
I
happen.
actually know somebody who took diamonds as a collateral.
You do, huh?
Yeah, my father-in-law owned a mortgage company.
Yeah.
So he got his collateral years back.
Yeah.
So it worked.
It did.
Oh, yeah, but then the deal, the buyer failed.
No.
They folded, and then he got stuck with a diamond.
Wow.
He actually went to a class to learn how to make jewelry, and the appraiser, seriously.
Yeah.
And then he was able to take his money out, but it's true story.
Wow.
What year was that? When was that?
Oh,
Long time ago?
don't know exactly,
Yeah.
70s, I don't know. 80s.
Yeah, so I mean, these things can still happen. One of our brokers who's here, she was in Bellevue at the time. She had the very first cryptocurrency transaction in the
Bellevue.
state. And she got a ton of media and stuff coverage from that, but they used it and, the seller was fine with it and
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah. So I mean, you're gonna see some different things, but you've got to ask, where's the money? Show me the money, right? Have that dialogue. A lot of times people think that, oh, it's all cash, it's all this, or even if, this is the part that even Annie Fitzsimmons talks about, that how do you know they even have their 3.5% down? I had a brand new broker, her very first transaction was like in the 500,000 price point back in, I don't know, this is back in 2006 or 5, somewhere in there. She was all excited, like, oh, this is awesome. And got the deal put together, inspection went smooth, everything was going smooth, it was just perfect. All of a sudden, escrow calls and says, we got a problem. The buyer's grandmother is refusing depositing the down payment because she does not approve of her grandson's girlfriend living in the property before they're married. And our buyer broker's like, Grandma, what? What is going on? Come to find out, our broker never used the Jerry Maguire clause to ask the client, like, oh, you're 20% down? Is that in checkings or in savings? Oh, you're 3.5% down? Oh, is that in checkings or in savings? It really doesn't matter if they've got a loan or not. That's the part that you really have to understand. If you don't ask that, the buyer was in default, lost their earnest money, which was the grandma's money, which our broker never asked the question. So right from the beginning of the contract, truly, they were in breach already because the buyer was using gift funds. They never wrote and structured the contract that way. Because of this. So just be careful. This is one of the biggest traps that brokers will get into.
Especially with the new law and the compensation.
Oh, yeah.
Currency, you have to talk about this.
Mhm.
Talk to the lender and say, do they have the money? Do they have enough money for this and this and this?
Yeah.
So it's just become.
So yeah, flip side, you're absolutely right. Listing brokers, how do you know that the buyer broker actually did this? Asked, oh, is it in checkings or in savings? Oh, your down payment, your earnest money. Like it says, every dollar is supposed to be coming from the buyer, and it's cash. Even the down payments. So just be careful on this one. All right, so financing the home, right? There's cash, underwriting approvals, pre-approval and pre-qualification. This is the level of, right, the highest to best. But how do you plan to fund the purchase? Like we say, are you having proceeds from a home sale, a 401k, retirement funds, future earnings, stocks, gift money? So actually in even the presentation, for the buyer presentation, this is in here for you to be ready to have that dialogue. Because you've got to understand this.
So,
Ramona?
quick question. So, okay, this is very common, right? We give money from a family member, we have 401k. So you have to make sure that the funds are transferred in a checking or savings account before.
No, you just have to make certain that
That's what we
you are drafting the contract
And
to
specify.
reflect whether they've got the funds or not. If the funds were already in the buyer's, possession, and it's already in their deposit, and they've got the funds and it's seasoned, it's already been there, you don't have to say, well, this money originally came from the parents' gift funds. No, they already have it. You gotta remember, Jerry Maguire clause says the buyer has sufficient funds in their possession as what the contract says they do. So if you know they're getting gift funds, you're gonna have to use that 22EF and disclose it. Like, how much is it and who's it coming from? All right, show me the money. Got to ask the client that. If it's all cash, no 22A financing addendum. If it really is, you're not using a 22A. You don't need a financing addendum. You would use the 22EF and you're gonna mark the box, right? The first box, number 2, evidence of non-contingent funds. That means it's their own funds. Now, if you're going to be marking this box, then you've got to provide the proof within like 3 days. But honestly, if you're in a competing market and you know that they're, got the funds or proof of funds, it's okay to send this to them right from the beginning, because then they got that certainty, right? Do you guys know that if you're a buyer broker and you're writing up a deal, they're getting financing, right? They're financing the deal. You know that you can actually supply evidence of funds even for their down payment. Because what does that do for the listing broker?
It's another layer of, okay, this guy sold it.
Yeah, because how many other offers are coming over with 22EF in it and they got financing? Some listing brokers might kind of even scratch your head if you don't communicate and tell them that, hey, we're ready. Buyer already has their, 20% down or whatever. We're even supplying you the evidence of their funds that they've got it in their possession. How many other offers are going to come in with that? That might get them thinking like, oh boy, yeah, I don't know. I didn't even call these other buyer brokers, or I didn't talk to their lenders. You're trying to convey certainty. This is some different ways you can do it. Just remember though, if you're marking box 3, I don't remember if I marked it. No, I didn't. If you're marking the third box about the disclosure of contingent funds, buyer is relying on contingent funds for the purchase. You've got the multiple choice, so you got the loan. So sometimes buyers are fully underwritten, approved. They're done. They just need a clean title and the appraisal to be done. So if that's the case, and they're in multiple offers, maybe you're going to use just this form and not a 22A, because they don't need the contingency, they're fully approved. You could mark number 3 and mark the box for loan, and you could say 20%, conventional down, mortgage by priority home lending or whatever, you can write that in. And then there's nothing that's gonna be contingent. No appraisal contingency. You're gonna have to like do a lot of homework and stuff like that. This is risky. Because in the event that maybe the appraisal comes low, now your buyer's got to cover the difference. There could be some, things in there that could be a challenge, but this is one way you could do that. If you're gonna mark the sale of the following owned by buyer, and that's a property, or maybe that's loose diamonds or cryptocurrency or whatever it may be, you could do that. If you're getting a gift for anything, even if the parents are like, we're gonna gift you the earnest money, this has to be put in here. So no matter what, if they're getting gifts at all, the gift of the dollar amount and from who's it coming from? You could put, name of the parents, whatever, that would go there. And then next is funds not readily convertible to liquid United States funds. Describe, if you have funds coming in, from a different country, you would have to mark this. No matter what, if you basically said, oh, the buyer's got this in their checkings and savings, but it's actually in China, that's not in US funds like the contract says it is. All of a sudden a delay comes later and they're like, oh, we're waiting for our funds to come in from China. The listening broker will go, what? You didn't disclose this. The agreement says buyer has in their possession US funds, immediately withdrawable. Right? And now the last but not least is other, describe. So you could put, whatever, sale of livestock or I don't know, whatever you want to put into this one. Selling a boat, selling a yacht, which you could put that also onto the sale of the following owned by buyer. But this is the key thing. If you're marking anything at all in number 3, you don't want to put the buyer also in breach because you left it at default. Buyer shall provide evidence to seller by default. It's 10 days prior to closing that the funds relied upon in section 3 have been received or are immediately available to buyer. If buyer fails to timely provide such evidence, seller may give notice terminating this agreement anytime before such evidence is provided. On and on and on. But how many times if buyers are getting funds, from something, a sale of something, or they're getting hard money loan, do they get those funds 10 days before closing? No, that's like, that really never happens, hardly ever. So I would put 0 in this box on line 29, because then you've got all the way to the closing date for the buyer to have that in their possession. If it's something like Eastside Funding and they're getting a hard money loan, those funds go to the escrow on the day of closing, right? So just put 0 here, probably, or maybe 1 day or something, or 2 days before. Because if not, you're already writing this deal and you're putting the client in breach. All right. Making the deal stronger in Form 21. This used to be an item W. I've got to update this to show because it's now on the front page because so many people were waiving this, but the information verification period. Buyer shall have 10 days after mutual acceptance to verify all information provided from the seller or listing firm related to the property. This contingency shall be deemed satisfied unless buyer gives notice identifying the materially inaccurate information within 10 days of mutual acceptance. If buyer gives timely notice under this section, then this agreement shall terminate and the earnest money shall be refunded to buyer. So people have been crossing this out for years. They think that, yep, this is great. I'm gonna, waive it from the beginning. We have actually gotten our clients out of contracts from this verification period, but you have to remember, this is not a get out of jail free card like the inspection contingency is. Inspection contingencies, you don't even have to go back to the property. You don't even have to have the inspection performed. That is a straight up get out of jail free card. If you have the Form 35 inspection contingency addendum in your in your deal. If it's there, they can walk for anything. This is not the same thing. This is for the buyer to verify anything and everything. We got our buyer out of a deal last year actually, it's been about a year now. We got him out when they waived inspection, waived Form 17, waived financing contingency. We actually got him out of the deal with this because the property did not have an AC. It didn't have an AC, air conditioning. And
Was it written in the listing?
the listing never said it had air conditioning. Guess where it had it?
In the remark?
Flyer.
Flyer. The flyer said property has AC. He cooled during the summer, something like that, right?
Misrepresentation.
So the buyer was like, hey, I got the flyer, they held onto this flyer and they said, man, I thought this house had AC and stuff. That's something we really wanted. And it doesn't. And we were like, no, it doesn't. And we went in there. Come to find out, we verified, yep, it doesn't have AC. So like, here's our out. So we called the listing broker and said, yeah, the buyer's gonna go ahead and terminate, based on the verification period. And the broker was like, no, they're not. There's nothing wrong with the house, with the listing. We're like, no, the property says that, you said that the property has AC and it does not. And she said, no, it doesn't. I never put that in the listing. We said, yeah, that's correct. You didn't have it in the listing. We scanned over the flyer. And because we sent the Form 50 and then the Form 90 that says, buyer's terminating based on verification period. And the broker's like, totally like thrown off, like could not believe it.
Oh,
She
yeah.
was so upset. But come to find out, their marketing person took the old flyer from the last property and just swapped out the photos and accidentally left some of the bullet points from on the marketing, from the flyer, from the previous listing. And they
that's
signed off on it, and
that's
that's
a
a way to
legal-
get out.
A legal technicality that stands. So if you get an attorney involved.
Yep.
It's absolutely.
Oh, no, yeah, it's right there. Look,
'Cause I can
or
see how-
listing firm related to the property. All information provided, so you can verify that.
Wow.
It's actually very detrimental to a seller. When you're the listing broker and the information verification period is actually waived, it's actually not a good thing. If that's gone and waived and the deal closes, the buyer never had an opportunity to verify all of the information. What is their only option to do? What do you think? It's already closed. Say it louder.
Sue.
Lawsuit, baby.
But do you know how many times in multiple offers?
Of course.
Listing agents are sending back the offer and saying, I need you to do this. I think I've done it before too.
Of course you have. It's multiple offer situations. You guys are gonna be doing this, but you have to fully understand, especially listing brokers,
The importance of it.
the importance of it, because once that's gone, the buyer's really only option later on if there's issues is like, well, I'm gonna have to sue.
Wow.
I mean, now, this obviously is not a bulletproof, perfect shield that's gonna protect them for anything and everything. And lawsuits can happen anywhere, at any time, any place, right? It's never gonna be, perfect. But I will say, if the buyer is having an inspection contingency and this thing is waived, that makes no sense. You might as well tell the buyer broker like, hey, can you just resubmit this? I see you got 5 days for your inspection, but you've waived the information verification period. Can you make that 5 days too? Because see, now there's two shields in front of the seller in our firm.
Right.
You got the information verification period to verify everything. That's including the flyers, the marketing, going to the county, talking, having dialogue, like, oh, can I put a dadu in the backyard and an ADU added onto the house or whatever the buyer wants to do? it's one of those things that, you know, we don't think about. We're like, oh, we're gonna mark the box, it's verified and waived.
That's definitely putting in perspective, you know,
Mm-hmm.
future action.
And that's the caution, right? It's literally, it's actually detrimental to our sellers. All right, continuing making the deal stronger in 22A. So if the buyer is getting financing, and I apologize, this is the older form. Right? The loan type definitely has a lot to do with it on, you know, whether or not it's going to be stronger or not. The amount down, definitely. Oops. It's missing one of my other things. Written loan application is very important. But, you know, what do you guys like to see? I'm gonna get more water. What do you like to see? What makes it stronger in your eyes? Listing brokers, what do you want to see in here?
Well, down payment, asking nothing from the seller.
Is the down payment amount super critical?
Sure, I mean,
Yes.
0 versus 20 is a huge difference.
Or 40, yeah.
Or 40, right?
Yeah,
Or
What
if
kind
it's
of capital loan?
What if I told you I would actually rather take maybe a 5% down deal rather than 20, maybe? Why would I want to do something like that?
If it came with a 22A deal alongside it.
Yeah,
Or
there
if
could
they
be
were-
other,
If they were fully underwritten,
yeah. If they're fully underwritten approved, that means the underwriter has already taken a look at all of the items. And they've basically issued the approval of the loan pending an appraisal. And pending a clear title. They're done. That is much stronger. If you know they're fully underwritten, done and approved. And you got someone who says, yeah, I'm 20%. Communicate with the lender and they're like, yeah, they seem like they're good. Yeah, they haven't verified the income yet. They haven't verified employment yet. What if all of that employment, most of it was, you know, overtime, and all of a sudden overtime's not going to continue? I don't know. I mean, we're trying to convey certainty, right? That's the name of the game. Being fully underwritten is much, much stronger. I would definitely even take, you know, that's something you can convey in your offers, because you definitely can close way faster, especially if the property is like vacant. They already got their preliminary title uploaded. You could review that and go, there's nothing on here. It's clean. It looks good. I don't think we'll, you know, anticipate any issues with title. You might be able to close, you know, 10 days. That's going to compete with cash potentially. Or these other 25% or even 40% down. Obviously, in the financing contingency, there are ways to automatically waive or, gosh darn it, doing that thing again. You got item A, which is the seller's notice to perform section. If A is marked, that means that financing contingency will go on forever until it's waived. Until the seller and the listing broker issues the 22 AR for the buyer to actually waive the contingency, it will survive, even closing. It just keeps going forever. But in section B, this is the automatic waiver. So you could put it to where it's automatically going to terminate within a time frame.
Okay, so what's the 21 days then for?
21 days is defaulted because they believe they'll be underwritten approved by then. That's to be fully approved by.
And if you're not, it's still standing.
If you use section A, it goes forever. I could put 1 day. I could put 0 days in section A.
And it's still standing.
And it'll keep going. It's just forever gonna keep going.
Until the seller.
Till the seller issues the 22 AR and you get it signed off on. And once it's actually signed and mutually agreed that it's waived, only then is it waived. Brokers will mess up on this all the time. and not even understand it. How many listing brokers issue the 22 AR to their sellers?
We do.
Yeah,
You probably do one of the three in the whole.
yeah.
We only recently started doing it.
This is the thing though, listing brokers actually, no matter what, even if the deal is going smooth as glass and you guys are getting great communication from the buyer broker and the lender and everybody in between, it's still the seller's right to issue the notice.
We try to do it nicely.
Yeah,
Especially if the transaction is going well. We're like,
Yeah.
"Hey, just per the agreement, we would request you to waive it."
this is the thing. And, you know, I've seen this in here and other offices plenty of times. The time where you're gonna get egg on your face, and I've seen this where, unfortunately, our listing broker never even brought it up to the seller. And they kept extending the deal. They had 3 extensions. And they're in the deal like almost 3 months. And the seller's like, when is this thing gonna close? Like, I'm not gonna extend anymore and stuff, and they go see an attorney. The attorney goes, okay, see that the buyer's getting financing. It's 21 days. So on the 22nd day, did you guys issue the notice for them to waive the financing contingency? So then you would have had a right to that earnest money. And they're like, no, we never, I don't know, my listing broker never said anything about this. So then the seller was pissed. Like, are you kidding me? We could have issued this and known that they were never gonna be ready and that they were never gonna, even waive this and be done. Instead of me extending over and over again. So then you're gonna look bad if you're the listing broker. So you have to understand that this section was designed this way. There's an automatic waiver timeline, and then the one that says a seller's notice to perform. So, and most of the time, if this form's not even marked at all, by default, it's always going to be A. See, like it says right there on number 2,
Mhm.
A if neither is selected. All right, financing addendum, loan cost provisions. Obviously, if you're asking for closing costs, it's gonna be a little bit harder to compete.
Bye-bye.
But we're still seeing this, in our market where buyers are needing, to get some funds to help with maybe the temporary rate buy down. So if there's stuff in here, that it's gonna be harder. Seller's response, all right? They got 10 days for the notice for low appraisals. Having this section in here, you could cross that out. Or, you like to call this the Russian roulette. Right? Huh? What we see some brokers do in this market, no 22A financing addendum. So no 22A at all. What does that tell you the deal is? It's all cash and unless otherwise specified in the agreement, right? We're talking about the Jerry Maguire clause again. Some people are writing this on addendums. Purchase loan. Seller agrees to permit the buyer's lender and or appraisers to access the property in the event that the buyer elects to obtain a purchase loan in the event. Typically, if this is written in, are they getting a loan? What do you think?
Yes.
Yeah. This agreement is not conditioned on buyer obtaining a purchase loan. However, buyer's source of funds is a mortgage on said property in addition to down payment. So we're seeing this,
Crazy.
I know, it's not very good
If I see
written
this, I'll be
language
like,
anyway. I literally pulled this from an addendum, from an offer submitted on one of our deals.
That's crazy. Why would, I would ask like, well, okay, what is the 22A?
How do you even know how much down they're doing?
Or what kind of loan or no?
How do you know how long their timeline is to make a written loan application?
Are agents that are making that?
Yes. Yeah, we've seen this numerous times. You could, have no financing, addendum. You could use the 22EF and you could be marking that the buyer is obtaining a loan But sometimes buyers are like, man, I don't know if this place is even gonna appraise for that. Maybe you're saying that, right? There is the 22AA, which is the appraisal addendum, and you could use this to have just a protection, you know, for the client if they're worried about that. But I mean, if you're competing, you know, multiple offers, you might not win it.
You know, yeah.
Yeah, you might not win it with that, but it just depends. But at least this is available for a little bit of protection. And then, of course, if you use that addendum, it's already in there that, if disclosed that buyers obtain a loan, seller shall permit inspections required by lender, including but not limited to structural, pest, heating, plumbing, roof, electrical, septic, and well inspections. Seller is not obligated to pay for such inspections unless otherwise agreed.
Do
So
you
it's in
find
there.
that like a negotiation tool? that people
Sometimes,
Just pretend you don't have a loan, but
yeah, yeah. Oh, I've even had cash deals where you can use this.
Mhm.
Cause they're like, I'm willing to pay for cash, but I want an appraisal. We don't trust the seller and listing broker.
But I'm thinking maybe it's a negotiation tool to just pretend you don't have financing, but then you add all these addendums, and it's just complicated in my eyes.
Yeah, I mean, you can't just use that alone. You're gonna, I mean, it's not quite the best way. For
Doesn't
sure.
sound like a good representation for the buyer. Even the
No.
buyer would be like, what are you doing?
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about the additional down payment options, right? 22 AD. These are coming into play. We did, we're seeing these again. This is the guaranteed amount of additional down payment money for higher than the asking, right? So house is listed at 500. All these buyers are doing escalations and they're like, hey, I'll do up to 550. Next thing you know, the seller counters you, okay, we're gonna go to 550. But if you have the 22 AD filled in, you're gonna guarantee $50,000 additional down payment? Maybe, or maybe it's some amount. But utilizing this 22 AD gives you that guarantee of a low appraisal. You're predetermining what's gonna happen in the event of a low appraisal. If you're the buyer broker and the lender gives you the appraisal, it does come in low. And let's say with that example of, like I said, of the $50,000, all of a sudden, let's say the appraisal's, 60,000 low. Right? So you're not gonna issue the 22, is it the AL? What's the notice of a low appraisal? Is that AL? Pretty positive, right? You're not gonna use that because, see, you've already predetermined what will happen in the event of a low appraisal. It'd be the ADL, I think, is what the notice will be. Is that it's even lower than what you said the gap is gonna be. But you gotta give proof and you gotta provide the complete copy of the appraisal. You have to issue that. So be prepared in the event that, offers are going over. This is an option, but the thing you've got to make clear to the buyer is that this is not like the down payment money. This is additional money. Like if you said I'm going 20% down and all of a sudden the appraisal comes in low and they're like, oh, we need another 20 grand to put towards this 50,000. We're going to reduce part of that down payment. You can't do that. This is additional money.
Right.
So they really have to understand it's money that's different than their down payment and earnest money. Separate money. If on the 22 AD you had to mark this, you could use the 22 AA for the increase down, but it also has that same addendum on here. It's like the mini appraisal, low appraisal. But also additional down payment, right? If buyer's appraised value of the property is less than purchase price, buyer shall pay additional funds up to dollar amount for buyer's additional funds towards buyer's down payment to close the sale. Buyer represents that buyer has sufficient funds to close the sale in accordance with this addendum. Buyer may not terminate the agreement if buyer's appraised value and or buyer's additional funds are equal to or greater than the purchase price. So escalation addendums. These are definitely coming into play. I think the last few brokers I've talked to that brought the multiple offers, they said, let's see, a broker had 11 offers. Out of the 11, 8 had escalations. So when you get escalations and you're competing against other escalations, that means you're taking both of those offers to the max purchase price and you're working your way backwards on who was the highest. And you have to supply complete copies to the offer on whoever you're going to escalate. A lot of mistakes happen though in the form. The thing that catches a lot of people and can be very dangerous about the escalation is the fact of the closing dates. Closing dates must fall within the 30 and 60 range. If it's below 30, there's a danger there. We've had, even in our own office, we had someone like use another offer to try to compete, but the closing was 29 days. So if it doesn't fall within the 30 and 60, and the only reason it did that was because the buyer waited one more day to sign off to get mutual. So stuff like this can happen, and the next thing you know, like that offer's no longer a competing offer. And they could literally like, oh, sorry. We're not gonna escalate that deal because the offer you used to escalate our offer wasn't even a competing offer because it didn't fall within that range. So it's very dangerous. There's dangers in that also because of the actual calculations. Every time we've done a class on the escalation addendum on the 22E or 35E, everyone gets different. Yep, Annie has done this too in all of her classes, and she said literally the room will split down the middle, 50-50 on who was right, who was wrong. And she said, because of that, she thinks it's best to just counter the other offer and just go ahead and remove the escalation, counter the buyer, and still provide the competing offer so they can see that you were actually, being honest and, faithful of what the other offer was. You just don't want to make any mistakes in the calculations, especially if there's credits. I think the worst ones on that as soon as you start saying, oh, buyer broker is going to contribute of some of the compensation back to the seller to help win the offer. As soon as there's credits and debits in there, I'm telling you, like that right away is a danger zone. You just probably should go ahead and counter just to make it safer. Because as soon as one party figures out that the calculations were incorrect, the buyer can initiate an addendum to say, calculations are wrong, should be this. Here's, the proof. If seller doesn't agree and sign off to this within like 2 business days, the price is actually going to go back down to the original list price. You would never want that to happen. That's very dangerous. All right, time for a pop quiz. No inspection equals no 35R or 35W inspection addendum, correct? They're not going to do it. You just don't include either addendum.
Better
You
to
guys think?
have better to have the waiver in there.
No, yeah. Completely false. We've seen this. We even saw it on a deal just this week in the multiple offer. They're like, oh no, they're waiving it. They're not doing it.
Where's the form?
If they're waiving it, please use the form, use the 35W, and then they're gonna mark that they're waiving the inspection. We much prefer listing brokers, more protection for our sellers, like go do a pre-inspection, right? But if a pre-inspection was conducted, don't have the mark waiver, mark that a pre-inspection was actually conducted. We see this kind of mistake kind of happen sometimes, is that just buyer brokers, they're trying to make their offer strong, but there's nothing wrong with having pre-inspections, but please, listing brokers, if the seller's going to be fine with having pre-inspections, then have the form filled out and signed by your seller already and uploaded in the supplements. So it's ready to go. Then the buyer understands that, oh, wow, there's already pre-inspection addendum in here. There's another indicator that we're probably gonna be dealing with multiple offers. But have the dialogue with the seller. Do you wanna have this? What are the positives? What are the negatives in allowing this? Some, listing brokers will talk with their sellers and say, hey, we should probably do a pre-inspection. But if you do that, do not forget to upload that JLS, seller procured inspection report addendum to go along with the actual inspection. Because what it does is it makes that inspection a part of the seller's Form 17. It makes it a part attached to it. So if you're buyer brokers and you see there is an inspection uploaded that's being provided by the seller, absolutely get that addendum signed and included. Because it actually makes it a lot stronger and better protection for the seller and the transaction and for you. Because some buyers, if they take that inspection and they're gonna be like, yeah, there's not much in here, I'm gonna go ahead and waive my inspection. Having that form signed solidifies the fact that you didn't tell them that take that, word of the inspection on behalf of what the seller is, giving you. It's gonna actually put a lot better protection in the transaction. All right. Inspection addendum. Like I said, this is, the get out of jail free card if it's in the deal whatsoever. Sometimes people will do the, hey, we're gonna go ahead and actually have a pass-fail inspection, right? You guys hear this all the time. Or they write this language in the deal, but yet there's a 35 in there still. That doesn't work. If the 35 addendum is in there, they have all rights to do every single thing that the form says. They could terminate, they could ask for additional inspections, they can ask for remedies, even if they actually write in those words somewhere else on a Form 34 or 22D page 2 other, the little mini Form 34. It doesn't matter, they can still ask for it. Additional inspections, some people are doing the buyer's notice, right, for additional inspections. Sometimes they're even crossing off this section. If you're gonna do one of these things where you wanna maybe say, hey, the buyer wants to have an inspection performed, but they're only gonna do a pass-fail, then I guess you could do this. You could cross off this section for section 3 and initial it. That means there's no more notice that they could have the inspection. I don't know. I prefer a pre-inspection be done. If they're gonna waive it, or they want to do a pass-fail, they're doing a pass-fail, might as well just do a pre-inspection anyway. So I
Eric?
really don't like it. Yep.
So I mean, like I definitely understand the kind of gray area, and that the pass-fail inspection doesn't necessarily mean anything when we agree to that, but when we're talking about winning in a multiple offer situation, say I've got an FHA buyer. This happened last year, that was a big part of why I was able to get that FHA buyer under contract, in addition to the communicating with the listing agent and everything. But it was just like, okay, we can't throw more money at it. Like, what's something that we can do? And, we talked a lot about it. I mean, even if it's going to be a little messy, it's like you're just trying to get your buyer's foot in the door. And if the listing agent doesn't know as much as you do, then use it to your advantage if you can.
So how did you write it? Did you just say this inspection shall be a pass-fail, or what did you do?
Yeah, we said the inspection is for, buyer's information only, will be pass fail. Yeah, buyer will not ask for any further repairs or price reduction.
Yeah. Let's see. I don't think I have the complete form in here, do I? Let's see. I can find the section. So first and foremost, when the form itself is used, there's boilerplate language in here about, first of all, who is allowed to do an inspection on seller's property? Right? When you, because you didn't use the Form 35 at all, is that correct?
No, we did. We used the Form 35, but then wrote, I think in the 22 AD, you know, in that other section, just put that language in there.
So you used the full 35
Yeah.
and you made the normal marks on the 35?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if a listing broker accepts that,
They'll walk.
you got the full remedies. You see how there's like ambiguity in the language, like it doesn't quite make sense. Like, okay, they can do an inspection for informational purposes only, and it's a pass or fail. But the Form 35 has all of your, right, all of the normal items are in there. You could do every single thing on both. I mean, if you can have the communication and they allow it, then I guess they allow it, but any listing broker you should know that if the form's there, they could do every single thing on that form. The language is conflicting. I'm gonna
sure.
guarantee close or I'm not gonna close. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just doesn't work.
This supersedes anything that you put on the 22 ID.
Well, it's not the fact that it supersedes, because it's up to the person who's got the contract to convey, you know, or not to convey, but to like, it's to their own understanding. Like which one's gonna win, or which thing's stronger? You have either option. Either party could do either thing. Think of it as the or sooner thing.
Right,
When is or sooner? When is that gonna be?
so the buyer can walk, even though the
Yeah.
pass or fail, passed, but,
Yeah.
oh, you know what, I
Changed my
seen
mind.
a different property.
Yeah.
So really, this one is the one that's done.
Either one can. It's to either party on which thing
So
they're
the seller
gonna
can argue
control.
the language on the 22 ID and say, well, you said that, this is what it is.
Oh, on 22D, page 2, other, yeah, Form 30, a little mini Form 34.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You could do it, but yeah, either way. Just, I don't want you guys getting confused and thinking that just because that language is there, if the 35 is in there, it could go either way. But the other part about if you had no 35 and someone wrote that language, that's actually dangerous. Because now you've removed the obligation for the buyer to actually hire a licensed professional. They could bring in anybody. They could do anything they wanted potentially. The other thing too, it actually talks about how, you know, sellers, like buyers shall be responsible for all damages. So you see this part about the seller, about buyer shall be responsible for all damages resulting from any inspection of the property performed on buyer's behalf. Okay, seller. We're gonna accept this contract because they're so much stronger and they're only gonna do it for informational purposes only. But there's no 35 in the deal. Who's responsible for damages now? If something happens to the property?
Seller.
Not the buyer. Yeah, now it's on the seller. Is your seller gonna be happy about that?
No.
Ooh. Different, huh? A lot of times we don't think about these things. So listing brokers, if they're gonna allow the inspection, you allow the inspection, but use the form. Don't just let that language replace that, because now you actually are taking on responsibility. Have you guys heard of stories how a home inspector has like fallen through the ceiling? You have, haven't you? Or some kind of crazy thing where, oh gosh, what was it? Oh, inspector was pulling on the outside of the fascia wood on the board on the house, and it just came right off, fell straight down, crashed through the window of the seller's car that was in the driveway. So they not only had to pay for the replacement of broken wood, and there was dry rot behind it and all this, but also had to replace the windshield. So things happen. Just be careful. And just know that if you see that language, then all remedies are there. 22J, so obviously waiving the opportunity to conduct a risk assessment or inspection of the presence of lead-based paint and or lead-based paint hazards. How are you guys having dialogues with your buyers about homes that are built before 1978? What do you say?
Or you give him the pamphlet and then you explain that, at that time was different. And you do have the, not the option, but, it could be in the,
So you say it could be.
I do, actually. But isn't that full disclosure?
Well, I mean, you're in multiple offer situations. Are they gonna conduct the risk assessment to go through and do it, test it? Why would you not do that?
You do that?
I don't know, do you?
No.
What about you, Zoom people?
You can always
you have-
I've never had anybody do the risk assessment
Me either.
because properties that old, they've been painted over and painted over and painted over. And yeah, it may still be there under, 20
Layer.
coats of paint.
Typically, yeah.
I think I'm using, unless you really chew on the,
That's
Right.
exactly what I tell people. Don't have your kids chew on the walls.
I do that, I do say that, yes. It's like, unless you do, then you're fine.
See, the truth of the matter is that prior to 1978, that it was in the paint. I mean, that's how it was manufactured, period. That's just, it's a fact. More than likely, if you like scratch through the wall and you tested, there probably is presence there. And I mean, it probably is. So you're kind of gonna do a test for for pretty much a guarantee that it's probably there. It's just, I think you just have the dialogue with the buyers and say, if it's built prior to 1978, it's probably there. We just don't know how deep in the layers of paint is it. I mean, it's up to you, but you're right. Yeah, definitely don't let kids and animals chew on the walls. Because that's, definitely it could be dangerous for them. And yes, you do have by law have to issue the pamphlet. How many homes built in 1978 maybe still have lead-based paint in it? Who knows? I mean, that's when that's the cutoff line, right? But we still see, it's weird, we still see houses that are built in 1978 and they still have the lead-based paint pamphlet. Or the,
Built in the
28.
90s and they include.
yeah, or the 90s. Yeah, we just saw that last week.
To make sure.
Yeah, we're just making sure. Yeah, it's prior to 1978. So if it's in 77 or below, you gotta have the 22J, you gotta issue the pamphlet. And if it's above that, then, you don't. But it's one of those things. All right, seller disclosure statement, right? By law, you gotta sign the top line, acknowledgement of receipt, no matter what. Now, if every single box, one line, one box per line, no matter what, should be marked, the yes, no, the don't know, and the hell no. And the not applicable, right? There's supposed to be one marked, no matter what. But if there's not, they're missing, then you gotta have dialogue with the buyer and say, it looks like they missed a disclosure. We could ask them to please disclose, properly. But you could also sign off on the second line as well to say that, buyers waiver the right to revoke their offer based on the seller disclosure statement. This definitely can be stronger in your deal because it is a 3 days out for the buyer from receipt. Not mutual acceptance, from receipt. So most of the time we're proving the receipt is typically with mutual acceptance because it's usually got the same date in which the buyer, right, wrote their offer. But you got to look at that. If you had maybe the Form 17 wasn't uploaded and then, you're the buyer broker and the listing agent is like, oh, here you go. I'm going to send it to you. They've got proof that they've sent it to you. You've received it.
And then you have to.
Now you actually got the 3 days timeline begins from then. So we've gotten buyers out of deals because of Form 17s not being completely filled out. You could ask that the seller go ahead and re-disclose and mark the proper boxes or whatever it may be. But at that point, if you're the listing broker and you're already in the deal like for a few weeks and they're like, oh, hey, we see that seller missed, these 5 boxes. If you have your seller mark those boxes and you issue it back to the buyer, the 3 days of right to redemption starts over. So they could just terminate right from that. So listing brokers, please have your sellers do your, Form 17s before you list the property. Go through it, review it. Did they mark 1 box, per line, no matter what? Or did they mark the first box of, are they occupying the property? You can mark that one for them. Because it says, if you read the line, it says, seller's disclosures are as follows, down from underneath that box. You can mark it whether or not they are. You can fill in the top for the address and the county and their names. But that's it. That's all you can touch. But you got to make sure it's fully filled in. Otherwise, that's an out potentially later for the buyer.
So if something is missed, can a buyer walk based on that, or you have to go to the seller and ask? Redisclose.
So it depends on whether or not you're in that 3-day. The buyer can walk for any reason at all.
So later, you have to go back. Let's say it's been a week.
By law, a seller must fully complete the disclosure statement. The one that a lot of times people get caught on is the fact that if any yeses with the starred items,
Mhm.
if the seller answers yes to any of the starred items, they have to explain on page 5 in the box. They have to reference the number, start item, reference it, and explain like what the situation is. Has the roof leaked in the last 5 years? And it's a start item. They say yes.
That's been remedied.
Did they not explain like what happened? If they didn't, that's not a complete disclosure. So that's any starred item. So now, if the buyer has an inspection and they go through and here maybe the buyer said, don't know on that, has a roof leaked in the last 5 years, or they put no. All of a sudden the buyer has their inspection and their inspector's like, yep, it's leaking. There's a, it's got definitely leaked in here. The seller doesn't have to redisclose because that's actually an item of discovery. They discovered that during their inspection,
Mhm.
right? But if the buyer terminates, they terminate because of the inspection and they tell you,
Then they have to disclose.
because they say seller to replace leaking roof. Southwest corner leak, is detected and, needs to be remedied. And the seller's like, no, I'm not gonna do that, not doing nothing. And then the buyer walks. Now the seller has to redisclose because it's a known defect.
Eric, can I go back a little bit?
Yep.
So let's say hypothetically, the seller filled out the disclosure form, but missed 2 lines.
Yep, 2 boxes.
The buyers signed off on it.
Sign off on acknowledgement receipt, the first line,
And waiver,
okay?
or is that your next step?
Yeah,
So if they acknowledge and sign the waiver, and then a week later they realize, oh, wait, they didn't answer this question. Buyers are SOL, right? They don't get the right to go back to the seller at that point, right?
so very key point is if they've signed off on the top box, right? This one here for acknowledgement of receipt of the disclosure. At any point, they could go back at the day before closing and go, hey, they missed 2 boxes here. And I'm not kidding, even if it says, is seller occupying the property? Yes, no. That could be at the disclosure and that they missed. You could go back and say, hey, I know this is kind of dumb, but the seller didn't fully complete the form. They didn't complete the disclosure. They missed that and they missed, this question, is the home on septic? Yeah, it's on sewer. They didn't mark NA. They left it blank. Whatever it may be. They go, oh, okay, listen, broker, very helpful. Hey, seller, you missed these 2. Can you go ahead and mark these? Great. They get them marked again. They send the disclosure back to the buyer, broker, and the buyer. Buyer can immediately terminate. Because the 3 days starts over as soon as a new disclosure is made. So, yeah, that can happen. Now, if if this has been signed off on, buyer's waiver of right to revoke their offer, right? Based on the seller's disclosure, and you still had missing boxes. Now, the seller did not complete it by law, but if they've already signed this, you're the listing broker, do not have them disclose again, because that right will start over. You'll say, I'm sorry, you guys have already revoked your, right to withdraw their offer based on on the seller's disclosures. Sorry, they missed it. You could verbally tell them, yeah, seller obviously is not occupying the property. And of course, the property is connected to sewer. Sorry, we missed those boxes. And maybe you can even send in an email. Doesn't matter. As soon as you redisclose, you could terminate that. It starts over.
Even if they wait.
Even if they did waive. So I would not redisclose.
Well, unless there's like a new discovery.
Oh,
Well,
there's
it
a,
depends. Like, we had a seller who completed the disclosure form, but then we discovered or realized like 2 weeks in, oh, there's an underground tank, an underground oil tank that
yeah,
has not been decommissioned.
yeah.
We have to then redisclose.
Yeah, stuff like that, a item of discovery of a material
Yeah.
defect
It's really big.
is definitely something that has to be disclosed. Here, I'll give you guys one, and this isn't in here, but let's say that you're listed the property, seller's on their disclosure. All of a sudden, they're like, oh, this, looks like there's like something on the wall. It's like mold or something is growing. Right? And it's getting bigger. I noticed it tiny, small. Now I'm back, 3 days later and it's this big now. There's something wrong. So then the seller's like, oh, we better get a contractor out there. They open up the wall and they're like, oh yeah, it's got a leak. They fix the leak, but then the contractor's like, oh wow, it looks like there's mold. There's stuff in behind the wall. And then the seller's like, we're not going further. Go ahead, seal it up, dry it out and seal it up. Does that have to be disclosed?
Yes.
But why?
It's knowing that.
It's a known defect, right? What if it's an estate sale? And their Form 17 is exempt? There's no seller disclosure statement.
The environmental section.
Huh?
The environmental section of the form is required for.
Not an estate sale. They're exempt.
No, but just the environmental portion of the form. I had an attorney tell me that. Is that not true? No portion of it is required for.
No. If it's an estate sale,
But what do you?
they're completely exempt from the disclosure. But if that situation happened, what would how are you gonna handle that? The seller's like, nope, we're not gonna disclose that.
Well, they can argue that they never lived there. So
Who's got a duty now to
Well, you as
disclose
the
that?
Broker, yeah.
You
If
as
he
the
knows.
broker, because now you know of a material defect, you would have to disclose it. And you have to explain it to your sellers that that's true, seller, you don't have to disclose this on a form, but now that this is discovered, I have a duty now to the public to disclose it. So we might as well kind of get the information and provide it. That's all you would have to do. Just, be careful with that one. All right. Okay, buyer, now that you've given up your firstborn, right?
Not quite how it works.
We need to have dialogue and talk about the buyer advisory in a seller's market form. This is something that we have that's in transaction desk, it's in the company forms, but this form should be used probably pretty much in every single deal today, right? It's something that the buyer just acknowledges and initials off on. And that's it. It doesn't go a part of your offer. It doesn't go in that, but they're waiving all these things, right? We talked about waiving inspections. We talked about non-refundable earnest money. We talked about escalations, right? All these other things. But if you don't, at least have the dialogue, have them sign off on this, there could be issues later. They could be looking at you later like, oh, great, we bought this house with no inspection. Now there's issues. They're going to be mad at you. You told me that it's the only way I'm going to win this house is if I waive this. having this signed off is just adding one of those protection shields in front of you and the firm. Because here's the, acknowledgement to all the dangers if they do waive these items. This will really protect you. I would have this initialed right along with your buyer brokerage agreement, right? All those items you're gonna give them in the beginning at the consultation, this should be in every one of those. All right, other ways to improve your odds of winning in a multiple offer situation. Submit a personalized handwritten cover letter or a video from the buyer. In addition, include your resume, your team's resume, or your lender's resume. Love letters. Gotta talk about them. Oregon at one point banned them, but you heard that the Realtors Association got them returned because this is something that buyers wanted to include. You got to be very careful though with the buyer letters, right? Listing brokers, sometimes what they do is say, hey, I didn't even read these. It's up to you if you want to read these. You have a statutory duty to provide all, documentation to clients, to your principal. You have to. So every offer, even if someone submits an offer and the deal's already pending, and it's like the offer's for like $2 to purchase this house, you're like, this is stupid. Throw it in the trash. You gotta send it to your seller no matter what. Don't allow the other broker or fax machine or an email to be your buyer's sole voice. I know a broker who literally goes still to this day. She goes and she presents in person if she can. You can totally still do that. Has anyone done that?
I have.
You have?
And I won the offer.
Did you win?
Mhm. Like she was a conference call with the sons of the
Yep.
estate. But it's, usually the listing brokers are not.
Yeah, they're not too happy about that. They don't want to go to have a meeting with their seller and you for, talk. I know a broker that literally, she brought her briefcase. She's sitting there at the table and she says, here's my buyer's offer. They go through all of the, the key points, turns it around and then they're like, well, this is nice, but we've only been on the market for 3 days. We haven't had the open house yet. We really appreciate you coming in person. This is, I'm sorry, we appreciate it, but we're gonna wait. Broker's like, okay, hold on, grabs that offer, puts it back in briefcase, takes out the second written offer. It's even better. They're like, this offer expires in 20 minutes.
Deal or
I'm not
no deal,
joking.
deal or no deal.
Yep, you're like, it's exactly the same. Here you go, as all the offers, but look at this price and now look at our guarantee. The sellers look at each other. They go, we want this offer right now. We want to sign this. And the listing broker is like, what do I do? Okay. They sign off on it. They won.
That's interesting.
You could there's forms that could say the seller is not going to have, in-person offers presented, but you absolutely can do that every single time for your buyer. Is that something that would completely separate you from a lot of other buyer brokers?
Yes.
Yes,
Mhm.
big time. It's perfectly still allowable.
And the love letters. I won.
Oh, yeah.
multiple offers.
I have seen a $50,000 love letter.
Mhm.
Our sellers, the buyers wrote about, oh, we absolutely love your garden. We're gonna continue it. We can't wait to grow this, this, and this. And they went on and on and on, and the sellers read that and teared up. Like, but this offers $50,000 lower. They're like, I don't care. I want this buyer to own my home. Some things are more important to money.
We're gonna keep the chickens. Oh my God, I'm so
Yeah.
excited about the chickens.
Yeah.
Mm.
If you
That
convey
makes a
all
huge-
that kind of stuff in, in the love letter, it absolutely can make a difference. All right, quiz time. Woo-hoo. Number 2, pencils. Can you write the letter for the buyer? The love letter.
No.
What? But you're so good. You can use ChatGPT even. Come on.
Can you edit it?
Can you edit it?
No.
You can counsel them, but to not put in there.
I definitely would do that, but absolutely not. You can't write their letter. You can't write it, you can't correct it. I was in one class and the broker's like, oh my gosh, I'm so good at writing these love letters, right? What?
I don't wanna hear it.
Like, no, you're not. I don't care how good of a writer you are. No, you cannot write that. If you end up breaking fair housing laws. How many of those love letters like break fair housing laws?
If you let the buyer write it every time.
It could, I mean, one of the number one things is saying the F word. What's the F word?
Family.
Family. Oh, right away, you just broke fair housing.
Kids, I'm a refugee.
Oh, boom, broke it.
Executive home.
Yeah, whatever, it could be anything. Oh, how about
What if
this
you-
one? Oh,
What
go
if you
ahead.
what if you edit it to make it less in violation of fair housing law?
You're still
What are you
touching it.
doing? You're touching it. I mean, you just can't really do it. What about this one? Supermarket is within walking distance. Is that a violation?
Yeah.
What about to someone who's in a wheelchair? That's just, yeah, it's just too dangerous. It's a slippery slope. You don't do it. Yeah, ADA, absolutely, Shane. Hopefully they're really handwritten more, yeah. I mean, handwritten's definitely gonna show a difference, but listing brokers, when you're presenting these, I think it's a really good idea to, have the dialogue with the seller to let them understand that, hey, a lot of times there's fair housing violations written in these. But by law, I have to give this to you. I have a statutory duty to provide all written, communication documentation. But,
You add pictures?
I've even seen videos. There's some people that have done videos they've presented.
I requested before.
Yeah. It makes a difference. Of course it does.
The dog,
Mhm. Now, is that gonna make a difference to a home flipper, an investor? Probably
No.
not. It might, who knows? I don't know. Listing brokers, how do you handle multiple offers? How are you doing this right now?
it's pretty cheap.
An Excel spreadsheet? That's a very good idea.
Yeah, we have a template going that has all the key points. and we can
Everything,
look
like
side
all
by
the-
side.
Yeah,
And I send that to the seller, yeah.
along with all the offers. You just do it that way. Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to handle them all, to be able to, lay those all out. Definitely having using the selling your home guide to have the dialogue, but using something like this is really gonna help you, lay everything out for you to easily see what's the differences, reviewing all those offers very carefully, going over all the key points is gonna help you, right? So being able to see like what will the net be for the seller on each of those.
That's a cool form.
All right, final quiz, you guys, this is it. How do you win 100% of all multiple offers? There's one guarantee. How do you win? Highest bid? No, you already, from this class, you already know that might not be it.
Be the listing agent.
That's it. Be the listing broker.
Yeah.
That's how you win 100% of the time. But that is another class. All right, you guys, thanks for making it today.
Hey, Eric,
Yes, yes.
you know that spreadsheet you just showed?
Yeah, I'll send it out.
I know.
Oh,
I
thank
want-
you so much. And thanks for the class. It was great.
You're welcome. Thanks for making it. All right, you guys, we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.